All right, what is going on, everybody? It's Roku, and we're back with some more League of Legends content. And today I've got an interesting video for you guys, one that's definitely going to be very useful to a lot of you. This is my How to Escape Low Elo guide video. And yeah, this video took basically the whole week to make because of how long it is. So yeah, this one's gonna be a long one. So the scope of the video is this, right? I'm gonna be covering all of the ranks that are considered completely low elo from top to bottom, right? Some people will also argue that parts of diamond are low elo, but you know, unless you're talking to a person who's like, challenger, they won't just straight up call all of diamond low elo, right? High diamond people do get good at the game, right? But anyway, we're not going to talk about that. In this video, I'm going to cover iron, bronze, silver, gold, and platinum, right? This video is basically like going to cover all of the most common mistakes that I have, spotted at lower elos, right? So every time I am, playing at these elos, coaching people from these elos, or just, am around players from these elos, these are the mistakes and misconceptions that I detect, right? Now, be aware that, like, this is simply my perspective. So this video isn't really one-to-one definitive, okay? So there are some things that I will have missed out. These are just the things that, I just commonly noticed. And honestly, with how, with some of the tips and etc. for some of the ranks that I have in the video, as long as you apply all of those things properly, you should be able to leave that specific elo, right? If those don't, do it for you, you're either lying to yourself or there are, other fundamental flaws with your play, right? And one more thing that I have to remind you is that, you have to watch this video and also work on the things that I discuss within the video, right? Just watching YouTube videos isn't going to get you good at the game, right? You got to watch YouTube videos and then work on, your quality of gameplay, I guess, right? So, yeah. The last thing I'm going to, say is that some of the flaws apply to all ranks, not just like, like sometimes I'll mention, oh, people have, massive mental issues in this elo, then, that applies to all ranks, not just that specific elo, right? So, yeah, I mean, some of the flaws apply like more generally than others. So I guess, watch the whole video if you want to see all of it, but if you're strapped for time, you can always just watch the specific part of it that you need. Now, if you're watching this on an embed in Discord or on Reddit, I'd recommend you switch to YouTube unless you plan on watching the whole, video from beginning to the end, because I have timestamped the video and you can basically just watch the parts that are relevant to you, right? I have to do the YouTube things, so, like, comment, and subscribe. I try to put a lot of effort into my content and, I'd like to, see some return for it, I guess. I don't know. If you'd like, you can join my Discord where I basically hang around most of the time. You can join there, you can ask me questions, but there are also a lot of good, knowledgeable people on my server. You can ask them questions as well. And once you join my Discord, you can also send me a DM if you want coaching from me personally, all right? So yeah, that is pretty much all the, side things out of the way. Quickly, the structure of every single rank is going to be like this. First, I'm going to introduce the rank. Next, I'm going to break down all the common flaws. Then I will suggest things that you have to work on specifically. And lastly, I'll cover things that are, the things that you have to avoid as a person at that elo, okay? So yeah, let's just get started, shall we? Our first rank is Iron. Now, I do believe that at Iron 4, there are less players in Iron 4 than there is in, like, Masters Plus, which is very impressive because, it's like there has to be some major flaws for a person to be stuck in Iron, right? So, like, there isn't much to it, but here are basically the three things that I think are like the biggest culprits, right? The first thing is horrible ping and FPS issues, right? So this is like the clearest thing that I've noticed, right? A lot of people in Iron just have like, they either have horrible setups that just can't play the game, or they still have like bad setups, but they just don't have the right graphics settings, right? They're playing on like hundreds and hundreds of ping because they're playing on a different server, or they have like, high or medium settings even though their computer, like can't handle it, and they run the game at like 10 FPS or something crazy like that. You know, they also have like faulty hardware that makes playing games in general a nightmare. Like, their mouse is broken or something. Maybe their monitor isn't, stuttering all the time. Maybe they got a really bad keyboard. Like we're really stretching, right? We're really stretching our, definitions for flaws, right? Because it's like, you know, there's not that much things that inhibit a player and keep them in iron, right? And another like way that players commonly get like stuck in iron is they're just insanely new to MOBAs, right? They basically have no experience playing League or Dota or anything like that. They're like they have no experience playing similar things like an RTS or something where you're like top down controlling a unit. They just never played games like that, so like the whole concept of League of Legends, though it seems like a bit, we used to it, right? The whole concept of League as a game, not just as like a specific esport or whatever the hell, just seems a bit alien to them, right? They just can't play it. So yeah, these are basically the most common flaws of Iron players, and yeah. And the number one tip to escape Iron is plug in your keyboard. But yeah, jokes aside, here's the actual advice, right? So number one, you have to try to make sure that you know what the basic mechanics of the game are, right? The basic things, okay? And I'm saying like I'm talking real basic. So what are champions, right? And how do you control champions, right? If you're new to MOBAs, you might be using your mouse to cast your abilities, right? Just click on the ability and then cast it. That's not really, what we do in League of Legends. You have to use your keyboard to cast your abilities and your items and stuff, while using your mouse to, control the movement of your character, right? And to aim your skill shots, of course. You gotta know what minions are, how they work, what is gold income, what is buying items, what even are items, learn how turrets work, learn how jungle champions work. And it's like, when I say how they work, I mean like just the really basics, right? Like what do you have to do for it to attack you? Things like that, What are the objectives? What is a dragon, right? What's a baron? What's an inhibitor? What is a nexus, right? Just know these very, very simple, basic rules of the game. And it's like, you kind of get what most of these things are by playing like the tutorials and stuff. But, I'd suggest just play bot games until you get it figured out or something, right? You just have to know the very basics, right? I think Riot is very good at teaching players this part of the game. They're just not good at teaching players anything that's useful in, any rank that's like higher, right? Once you know all the basics, then you have to make sure that you're used to the controls, right? So keyboard one hand, mouse the other hand. Just make sure that you're used to this, okay? It's how you normally game, but make sure that, like you're not kind of awkward and slow. Just make sure you get comfortable with them. And lastly, just play the game more, right? A lot of people who are stuck in iron, quote unquote, aren't actually stuck in iron. They just ended up in iron, but are too scared to play any more games, or they just don't care enough, right? Let me tell you, as long as you play enough games, you should be able to get out of iron, right? Now, the whole like horrible FPS and ping issue is going to be an issue for you regardless of rank. It's just that it's it seriously holds back iron players, right? So in terms of like the settings and the FPS and like the ping, just try to make sure you optimize your gaming environment. Like number one, try to play on the server that's the closest to your location, right? You might be accidentally playing on NA or something. Two, just make sure all the settings are on the lowest possible, right? Make sure the resolution is really low. All the settings are on the lowest possible like way they could be, right? And yeah, right? Just make sure everything works properly. And in terms of things to avoid, basically nothing, right? This is just if you're an iron player and if you're stuck in iron, this is the phase of you just getting into the game, right? You're not yet comfortable with things. You're not yet, used to things. Everything seems new and alien to you. And if you just play the game more, you'll eventually get out of iron, right? Now, had to drink water there. As Darius says, stay hydrated. Anyway, yeah. Bronze, right? Now, this is the first rank that people just get hard stuck at, right? What are the common flaws of bronzes that I've perceived? So first off, right, there are two types of people who are stuck in bronze. They're the ones who just don't play enough. They have a lot of rank anxiety, or they just don't play enough solo queue, right? Just don't care or whatever. And there are those who just spam hundreds of games, and they just don't they basically go in and out of game, just not learning anything. Okay, the basic controls are grasped, right? They know how to play the game, but they have no idea what they're doing in terms of any concepts. They have no concept of runes, they have no concept of builds, they don't know how to CS, how to trade, they don't know anything, right? Does not actually understand anything about the game, right? Just knows how to input commands and kind of control a champion, but generally just has no idea what they're doing, basically, right? Now, all these things about bronze players not knowing what they're doing wouldn't be bad, but the thing is, a lot of these bronze players think that they're correct about some things, right? And that is such a big error, because if you're bronze, like, I don't want to insult you or whatever, but chances are you are wrong about basically everything about the game, right? You don't know anything about the game, right? It's like, to be stuck in bronze, you really have to be like really foreign to any of these more complicated or even the more basic concepts, right? So you have to just accept that you're like, just accept that you don't know anything and keep an open mind to changes, right? And also, with a lot of bronze players, their champion pool and like the roles that they pick is just horrible. They constantly jump from role to role, from champion to champion. Like, they just don't even have an identity for themselves, right? So, how to escape bronze, right? So I already discussed this point before, except that you don't understand anything about this game, right? You don't. There are no excuses. You can't blame your team. You can't blame, Riot Games for buffing Akali or some stupid thing. You're bronze because you're bad, right? And without accepting this, you're not gonna rank up, right? If you don't understand the reality of the situation, you'll never be able to build on top of it, because you don't even know what you're building on top of, right? You're gonna be working on this imaginary version of yourself without actually knowing the reality of the situation, which kind of sucks and really just inhibits improvement, right? You need to pick a single role and start learning things, the basic things that are relevant to that role. Okay? So instead of just jumping from role to role to role, just pick one role. Just one, right? You're not a field player. You don't know how to play 2-3 roles, right? You don't know how to play anything. So just pick one thing, right? The role that you think sounds the coolest, and just stay on it until you get the hang of the game, right? You need a role to learn the game through, and then you can choose to branch out later on, right? I would recommend learning the game through top lane or mid lane, right? Because jungle has its own weird playstyle, right? It's different from all other roles. And bot lane is only recommended if you're learning the game with someone else, or you already have a friend who plays the game who also plays bot lane. Like, playing bot lane without like a duo queue, especially in lower elo when both of you are kind of bad, is a very painful and annoying experience, right? So top or mid are basically the recommended beginner roles. Top especially because mid is far more difficult. So yeah, right? Now, of course, these are just my recommendations. You can start with anything you want, but just keep it in mind, okay? Now, this is the big thing. You need to start actively using your brain in game, okay? This might sound condescending at first, but let me elaborate, right? You need to keep track of things like cooldowns. You need cooldowns. You gotta keep track of is Baron up, is Dragon up. You need to keep track of okay, so I'm gonna get level 2 with this one minion, right? Or he's gonna get level 2 in 3 more minions. So you gotta play around that. You gotta keep these things in mind. Okay, keep track of summoner spells. Ping them or something, whatever, right? Just actively think about the game, right? Just keep things in your mind so that you can help make plays, right? You don't want to go for fights where you don't have enough mana and you just die, right? So you have to just look at the game and keep track of things and keep things in your head and understand, okay, in order to do my combo, I need 200 mana. Do I have 200 mana? Yes, I might go for it. No, I'll back off, right? So just start getting used to using your brain, okay? Actively, all right? Then you have to prioritize basic things, okay? Really basic things, okay? So the most basic thing you can prioritize if you're going top lane or mid lane is CS, right? So you can be like, okay, I am going to have above this amount of CS, I'm going to have 8 CS per minute this game, right? And you try your best, you focus on CSing, okay? You try to, okay, this game, I am not gonna die to. Okay, that's a bit of a more complex thing, right? So it's like this game, I will not get solo killed by my opponent. Okay, and if you fail at things, go look up guides and tutorials on how to do that. Come back, try them again. Okay, just focus on basic things like not dying a lot. Just like you just have to clean up your game a tiny bit to get out of bronze. Okay, you just need to play the game more to get good at mechanics, and you need to clean your game up a bit, okay? Next, just copy builds and runes, okay? Go to, like, the OPGG of some professional, or like a high elo one trick, or some guide, and just copy the builds and rune pages and stick to it, okay? Stick to it to the letter. You are bronze. You don't need to worry about builds and runes, okay? There is no one weird, freaky build that's gonna, rank you up, okay? There's nothing like those don't matter for you as a bronze player, okay? Your priorities are learning the game, okay? Getting like being able to play this game, okay? So just make sure you don't have that many things on your mind aside from trying to, play the game properly and trying to accomplish the goal that you set for yourself, for example, like the CS goal or I'll have more than 10 or 20 vision score as a support or some things like that, right? Just like these aren't techniques that are too useful for higher elo players who want to improve, but if you're bronze, then just sticking to the number things like KDA, CS, and etc. are fine, okay? Just, have something that can be easily tracked and just work on it, okay? Things that you should avoid. Constantly swapping roles. I see this a lot where it's like, I talk to a guy, 1 month he's top lane, 1 month he's jungle, and then he's mid lane. It's like, bro, just stick to one role and don't confuse yourself. Next is just overcomplicated champions. Things like Lee Sin, Yasuo, Riven, try to stay away from these kinds of champions, right? Now look, you can play whatever you want. It is just a game. But it's way harder to learn the game on a complicated champion than a simpler champion, right? The general idea is this. The easier to play your champion is, the less time you're spending trying to figure out what your champion does, and more time you're spending actually focusing on League of Legends, okay? League is kind of different than champion knowledge, where it's like, champion knowledge is basically just the medium through which you learn League, right? League, I said this one way before, but basically, League is the bowl of soup, and the spoon is the champion you choose to eat it with, right? So it's like, a spoon is basically Garen, and Riven would be like using chopsticks to eat the soup, right? It's just try to go for simpler things, okay? So yeah. Next, don't tunnel vision on kills. I see this a lot, even at like a bit higher elos, where people just play for kills, like it's some sort of like fighting game or something, right? This is League. There's a lot more going on, so you gotta be, a bit more macro about your view of the game, right? And next, stop spamming games on autopilot, right? I see people just spamming 10, 20 games, well, not 20 in a row, but like 10 games in a row in a day. And it's like, they're basically just as bad, or they're just as bad as they used to be before they started this playing session, which should not be the case, because when you're playing a game of solo queue, you're basically attempting to sharpen yourself, right? So you can play the next game better, if that makes sense, right? Now, this process of getting better from game to game to game to game is a very long process, so you won't immediately notice your progress in a day, but over a month there will be progress if you actually work on yourself from game to game to game and focus on achieving certain goals, okay? So instead of just going through games without understanding what you're doing wrong, try to work on things specifically, okay? Now, that was it for bronze, okay? if you just get good at some specific things in bronze, or if you just get decent enough mechanically, then you will probably just carry yourself out of bronze. Because, like, bronze, you get stuck in bronze if, like, legit, you're just not thinking about the game, right? If you played hundreds of other games in bronze and you're still in bronze, then you just don't think about this game. Or you just think about the wrong things, okay? About things that don't matter. So, if you just set your mind right, and practice, with that nice new mindset, then you should be good to go. All right. Okay, up next we have silver and the common flaws of silver players, right? The roles are more defined from player to player, but the champion pool is still way too massive, right? It's like you ask them what champions they play, they're like, "Oh, I played Urgot, Shen, Darius, Aatrox, Set." And when you have a very wide champion pool, this doesn't mean that you have a big champion, that you're good at a lot of champions. It just means that you've picked many champions and you're just not good at any of them, right? When you're a lower elo player, you cannot possibly be good if you have a massive champion pool. You have to reduce the size of it, okay? A lot of people in silver don't know how to play defensively at all, okay? It's just attack, 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 attack. And if they're attacking into the situation where they're in like the disadvantage, they're not even gonna go with defensive. They're just gonna go for it head on and constantly just die for no reason, right? Silver is also just constantly die for lost objectives. It's like, two of your teammates die, it's 3v5, so you have to give up Baron. The silver players would just rush in and die to the enemy anyway, right? It's like, they constantly die for things when they don't need to, right? A lot of silver players are also insanely emotional. They constantly flame, right? A lot of them also die the same exact way over and over again and just, make insane decisions. And like, the basic idea is this, right? For a silver player, they have like an idea of the game, right? They have a plan for the game. But if something happens that throws this plan off of balance, and that's not very difficult to do, right? They get ganked, or they get invaded, or a play happens in the river that just causes everyone to die. The second there is like a single mishap in this quote unquote plan the silver player has, then they just completely crumble, right? Their decision making becomes way worse. They just completely just feed, and they just can't adapt to any situation, which is like really bad because League is a very dynamic game, right? There's so many things in League and it's so complex, and it's like, adaptability is one of the features of, or one of the skills of the best League players, right? Silver players also have very bad itemization and runes, and although they kind of understand the basics of like warding, CS, KDA, kills, deaths, they understand the very basics. The second you delve into a more complicated topic like wave management, it's like, huh? It's like they just don't know anything about that, right? So they have zero understanding of complex mechanics or complex topics of the game, right? How to get out of silver, okay? I mentioned this before already, but you basically want to make sure that your champion pool is small, right? I would recommend having a maximum of 3 champions if you're indecisive, right? But I would recommend 2, okay? Now, one tricking is not bad, right? If you one trick, you're going to get so mechanically good at that one champion that you basically, like, one tricks rank up the fastest, like, by far, but it's just that, like, it's always a good thing as a solo queue player to have a second pick, right? So I would suggest you have one champion that you play the most, and you have a backup champion that you can pick if it's like an emergency, like if your main got counterpicked, or if your main got banned, you have one thing in backup, right? So maximum 3, but I recommend 2, okay? Any more is just too much, right? And I don't mean 2 champions per role. I mean 2 champions in total, okay? 1 role, 2 champions, that is it, okay? Try to practice your champions to reduce mechanical errors, okay? So you have to make sure that you can pull off all of the simple things, all of the mechanical things of your champion, okay? So If you're playing Garen, make sure you can pull off QE, stand next to the target with the E, use your W to block attacks, all that stuff. If you're playing Darius, make sure you know your RWQ combo, make sure you know how to land your E, make sure you know how to land your Q, If you're playing, some sort of Z thing, make sure you can, what to put your shadows, how to with triple Q. Though Z is one of those complicated champions that I suggest you stay away from, but still, right? It's just an example, If you're playing, I don't know, Vayne, make sure you can understand how to kite, how to use your Q, how to use your Q as an auto reset, using your condemn to, stun people by putting them into the walls, all these kinds of things, right? Make sure whatever champion that you picked, you're okay at them mechanically, that you don't mess up the basic things, okay? Even if it is a simple champion, make sure you got the hang of them, okay? You need to understand the limits of your champion, okay? And you can do this by watching people play your champion or by just experience, okay? But if you spam games on your champion, you'll eventually get to a point where you have a pretty good idea of what your champion can do or can't do, okay? This is a big point, and it applies to people of all elos. I just mentioned it here because, like I said, silvers don't play defensively at all. You can't win in every situation, okay? Sometimes the best outcome doesn't look like the best outcome, right? Now, let me just give you a situation to, let me just visualize something, right? So you are up against a ranged top laner, right? And you go for CS, and this ranged top laner chunks you out, okay? So you're like 200 health, okay? You fall back under your turret, but now this ranged top laner is pushing a wave into your turret, okay? And you have no vision, so the enemy jungler might be there, okay? The best call in this situation isn't to stay on the turret and die, but it is to go back to base. That's the best call in this situation, because if you think about it, right? That turret is probably gonna die no matter what, okay? So what's worse, the turret dying or you and the turret dying, okay? Obviously, you just have to let the turret go, right? So you can actually save your life, okay? And this is the key thing that a lot of players don't understand, okay? When you're getting camped or something, or you have to play defensively, it's not a question of winning X and losing Y. It's a question of losing a certain amount or losing that certain amount and even more than that, okay? You have to mitigate your losses, okay? Like I said earlier on in the video, if you guys griefed, half your team is dead, then don't go for, Barons, right? If a person on your team is dead and the enemy team is sieging and going to take your inhib, then just give that inhibitor up and wait for the guy who's dead to respawn, because then you have a better chance of fighting them off and, stopping the enemy from ending the game, right? Against the ranged top laner, don't go for CS where you will get hit, right? Don't go for CS where if you go for it, you lose 200 health, right? You lose like a ton of health, right? Don't go for things like that, All these kinds of things, right? Just make sure you can play defensively, right? Like if you're jungler and none of your laners are prio and the enemy jungler is killing the crab, just don't go for the crab, right? Unless you're stronger than them and you can kill them really quickly, just back off. You don't have to die for a crab. You have to make sure to get to the other crab and hopefully get that, right? You can't win in every situation. You have to just play the best outcome, but the best outcome isn't always a positive, right? It's just the lesser of the negatives, if you get what I mean, right? You also want to copy builds and runes in silver as well, kind of like in bronze. You're not at a level where you should start changing things up, okay? Now, mild changes like changing legend tenacity and legend alacrity, or changing the stats that you get from instead of taking armor, take MR depending on your lane, right? These mild changes, right, are okay, right? Getting executioners versus Vladimir, right? These mild changes, but if it's complicated, then just don't think about it and just stick to a single build or rune path, okay? Just tiny changes, or just don't change it at all, okay? Focus on the game, focus on cleaning up your game, and all that, Clean up your laning. This doesn't really apply to junglers, but you really want to just get good at laning, okay? You want to understand matchups, you want to understand how to CS with your abilities, with your champion, you want to understand how to win lane, right? How to go for kills, what kind of kills your champion can actually go for. And if you are mechanically good enough to just win lane by default, you are on average going to win more games, okay? Because in lower elos, people don't generally understand how to deal with really fed characters, right? They're just gonna throw champions at you over and over again, just really disorganized. And as long as you're clean enough, you can just cleave through all of them and just kill them one by one, okay? You also have to start grasping more complicated topics, right? You don't need to get good at them, okay? Not yet, but you just have to understand what they're about, right? Some macro vision, map awareness, wave control. Just understand what they're about, okay? Just try to grasp them briefly, okay? But if you just clean up your laning, if you just tamper your play a bit, and if you improve your mechanics on specific champions, you should be able to get out of silver, okay? Things to avoid. 1. Stop dying for no reason, okay? Like I said, it's okay to give up objectives for your team. It's okay to give up objectives that your team cannot fight for, okay? If you just if you have a lead, then keeping your lead is like your number one priority, especially if you're in a situation where you're the only carry, okay? So just minimize deaths for no reason, okay? Or just minimize deaths like in general, okay? Next, don't flame your team, okay? You are just as bad as them, okay? And like the previous bronze thing, you're silver because you are silver. Okay, you're not some secret hidden. Just because you play with your platinum friends, it doesn't mean you're secretly the best player in the world, just stuck in silver. No, dude, you're silver. Okay, you're silver because you're silver. Okay, so yeah, just don't type in chat. And if you have no self-control, if you're just a toxic person, then turn off the chat through the in-game settings, right? And just be done with it. All right, the chat is just arguably the biggest source of like distraction in the game there is. Okay. Next, stop focusing or caring about things that don't matter, okay? Buffs, nerfs, the meta champions, tier lists, builds, rune pages, like just these things do not matter for you, okay? These things don't change anything for you, okay? You didn't even have to get like you're at a level where there are so many mistakes, where there are no standards for play, right? You're at such a I don't want to be rude, but you're at such a low level of play that none of these things matter, okay? If you just improve your own gameplay, you can just get to the next level without caring about any of this crap, okay? The last thing that I would suggest that you avoid is champions that are passive or more supporty, big tanks like Maokai, or like tanks that can't fight, basically, right? Or, Sejuani or something, or Zac or something. Support champions like Enchanters, Karma, Lulu, Yumi, whatever. These champions that aren't... You want to go for independent champions, okay? You want to go for champions that can do stuff on their own, and that hopefully have damage, okay? Now, I'm not saying it's impossible to win when you're playing more passive champions, right? I'm not saying it's impossible to win on a Soraka, for example. However, right, sometimes you're going to have to be like, because you're in a lower elo and nobody knows what they're doing, you're supposed to just play a more aggressive champion and get out of the elo ASAP, right? And then maybe if you're at a bit of a higher level, then some of these supportive champions are more acceptable to play. But it's just a bit rough playing supportive champions, and you have to support people that have no idea what they're doing, basically, right? That's just a rough thing that you have to deal with if you're going to play, if you're intent on playing these support champions or passive champions, Anyway, up next, we have our next rank, Gold, right? Apologies for the pixelated image, but yeah, this is the goalpost for a lot of the community, right? This is it. You've gotten the skin, right? Victorious, whatever. So, yeah. Common flaws of gold players, right? A lot of gold players just don't take the game seriously, right? They play way too much for fun, and they just grief games, okay? And I mean solo queue games, right? They just don't take the game seriously at all, right? They don't play to win, they play for fun, right? They just keep 1v1ing, and they basically justify them griefing the game for that. Oh, I'm just playing for fun, right? Which is kind of messed up, They experiment with horrible builds, champions, and playstyles way too much. They build crit on bruisers. They play things like Bard top or some, bizarre thing, or they, try to play Skarner like a Ramus, like a crit tank thing that's just like an assassin basically, right? It's just they experiment with things way too much, right? They are very confused about what they want to do with the game. Now, this is more of like a personal thing, but a lot of gold players like don't know what they want to do with this game, right? Do they want to keep it out of the game, or they want to get good enough to the point where they can do more with the game, like go pro or like make content for it or something like that, right? They just don't know what to do with the game, right? Which leads to them not being too open to improvement. Okay, whenever the game gets difficult, or when the game gets like to the late game or like past 30 minutes, gold players, or even past the laning phase, gold players just start losing their minds. They just start ARAMing for no reason, just running mid, grouping, and just fighting, basically. Whereas they could be doing like 10 better things, right? Gold players have an insane lack of champion knowledge, okay? They also do not know things that they have to start getting a grasp of, right? The complicated things that I talked about for the silver slides, that was like, you guys start taking a grasp of. Now you have to start understanding these, right? Wave management, vision, how ganks work, like how you should play hard lanes, how you should play range top laners. You should have these things down decently well, okay? Gold players also have zero map awareness. It's like they just get caught by things that they should not be caught by at all. And the last thing is, a lot of gold players don't play nearly as aggressive as they should, which leads to them not being able to impact the outcome of the game most of the time. Okay? Now, how to escape gold. First off, you have to determine what you want to do with the game. Okay? This is the most important point. Okay? Because if you don't plan on getting any better at the game, then you should probably not spend more time on solo queue, okay? You have your gold rank, play some games here and there, just for the lols basically, but you just don't have to spend a major amount of time with the game, okay? Right? If you don't plan on doing anything with yourself, if you don't it's not just that, like career or money things that you should be looking forward to for League, like, boosting your content creation. It's like, if you personally don't want a higher rank, then you should not waste your time any further, okay? This is insanely important because this is the point where you can no longer just casually play the game and rank up, okay? Gold is the point where the grind starts. You have to now put work into the game to get any better, okay? You're not just gonna just keep playing the game with some mental adjustments in your, mentality and get better by default. You have to put work into it, okay? So yeah, just make sure you determine that, and then let's continue, right? Next, try to know what champions do in the game, right? You have to know what the abilities of all champions are, right? And this is insanely important because knowing your own champion and how to pilot them is good, but it's even better if you know what your champion does in relation to all of the other champions, right? Because then you can basically be more adaptable, right? You know what some characters do and how to play against them, right? So, like, try to just memorize or learn the abilities of opposing champions and allied champions. Just know all the champions, okay? It's very basic, but trust me when I tell you that there are people in this game who don't know what some champions even do, okay? Or some champions have passives, like Akali basically with her shuriken. If the shuriken lands in her shroud, she can go back to it, right? But a gold player sometimes wouldn't know about this. So they would just, play it like she can't do that, and then when she does do that, they'll just get outplayed, right? Next, you have to stick to the meta build, okay? Just take the things that people, like the best people take, okay? Copy builds from high elo 1 tricks. For me, high elo would be higher than Diamond 2 for good regions like EU West or like Korea or something. And if you're going for smaller regions or North America, then you should be looking at Masters and above, okay? So just copy builds from these high elo 1 tricks and just, have that as your basic blueprint, okay? Now, you have to understand knowing why you build certain things, right? Why do we take certain items, right? What stats do we get from these items? What stats does our champion like, right? What kind of runes synergize with our champion better, right? You can't just take things. You have to know why you take things, right? Because at gold, you are expected to make small changes to your build and runes here and there. Some games you have to take more tenacity, some games you have to buy anti-heal, sometimes you have to buy QSS. You are expected to make these changes to optimize your playstyle, okay? Now, you don't have to make radical changes like build some freaky item that you saw this one trick build once, right? You don't have to do that, but know the basics, understand why, and apply why to your games, okay? Because if you understand why, then you can make the decisions for yourself, right? Try to make sure that you're calm during games so you can make good decisions, okay? You have to make sure that you're mentally stable, okay? That you're not just losing your mind, that you're not distracted, that you're not like, like just crazy or something. You're focused on the game, okay? Just focused and calm so you can make rational decisions like, do I have to ARAM here and waste my time, or is it better if I take the side lane minions first and then go for the Baron fight, right? Think of it like that, okay? Keep sight of what's important, okay? Like, the big important thing is taking down this turret, or you're fighting at the enemy base, but instead of just chasing them going for kills, just drop that and kill the enemy nexus, right? Keep sight of what's important, okay? You have to start looking at the minimap and like having some decent map awareness, okay? Without map awareness, you're gonna get caught and just murdered very often, right? Map awareness is bad for almost all roles except for maybe ADC earlier on, right? Like, top lane without map awareness, you're just doomed, right? You're gonna get camped and murdered. Jungle, without map awareness, you can't even play the role, right? You're just gonna be some bot who just gets killed, right? Because you can't path properly, you're gonna get invaded and destroyed, you're gonna go for crabs that make no sense when your lanes have no prio, right? Mid lane, basically the same. You're basically just gonna be farming your lane where your team is just annihilated by your opposing mid lane, right? So you need map awareness, okay? Start making intelligent usage of your wards and actually look at them, okay? A lot of people put down wards, but they don't actually look at the wards, right? They just ignore the wards exist, and then they get killed. Like, they just get killed again, and it's like I put a ward there. Yeah, a ward is no use if you don't actually look at your map, right? So you gotta actually put the wards down and look at the vision that they give you, right? Periodically. You have to play more games, but you need to put emphasis on training your in-game mechanics. This is the most important thing, okay? You have to get mechanically good at the game now, okay? We've reduced your champion pool. We've reduced your roles, okay? You have to make sure you're at a point, not at a point where you're outplaying your opponent, okay? But at a point where you're not messing up, okay? The big thing about improving your mechanics isn't like being some sort of like faker god who just outplays the enemy, but it is to make sure that you're reducing the mistakes that you make, right? You're not missing your skill shots as often, right? You can miss sometimes, but you don't miss them as often, right? You always land your combos properly, okay? You always use the right succession of abilities, right? You don't mess things up, right? Like, training your mechanics is reducing your mistakes, right? And if you want to get past gold, you really want to just, like sink your teeth into these mechanics and train them, okay? You can either watch better players play those champions, or you can just learn through brute force experience, maybe just train them in the practice tool and try to apply them in the game, right? So, yeah, right? Make sure your mechanics are kind of like not insanely good, but to the point where you're not consistently messing up, okay? Things to avoid, okay? You have to now start looking up videos for specific things, okay? A clickbait video of top 10 tips how to carry your team, that's not too useful, okay? That's basically just entertainment. It's not a bad thing that it's entertainment, right? Entertainment is fine, but don't delude yourself into thinking that that's gonna help you get good at the game, right? Things like how to carry the game from mid lane. It's like that video is way too general to be useful, right? You gotta look for specifics, right? Like, Riven Mechanics Guide, or How to CS, right? Wave Management Guide. How do you sweeper properly? Just look for specifics, right? And if you don't know what the specifics are, try to analyze your own gameplay and try to find what you suck at, right? You probably already know what you just suck at, right? Unless you're insanely delusional, right? So just look at the things you're bad at. Let's say you die in lane. It's like, why did I die in lane? You watch your own game. It's like, oh, you just lost a trade like really badly, right? So is it a specific matchup that you hate playing against, or are you just bad mechanically, right? Then you can look up a mechanics guide, or you can look up a specific matchup for that champion. You can look up guides where they have some extensive matchups, and you can go look at the matchup section or something, right? Look for specifics. Specifics will help you get good at the game because you're basically tailoring content to yourself, right? Specific content applies more to you than general content because general content is made to apply to everyone, right? And if the general video is also a short video, then chances are it's basically just there to suck up watch time, okay? Next, make sure that the person that you're learning from is someone who knows what they're talking about, okay? Don't take advice from people who don't understand the game, right? If your favorite YouTuber is basically just his whole or her whole identity is just troll building, then maybe you should not listen to them, right? Then maybe you should take advice from another person who actually plays your champion to a high level, okay? Do not go for stupid builds, right? Even if you see like some YouTube video where a person tries a stupid build, like even I make these videos where I just try stupid builds, just don't go for it, okay? If you're trying to improve, go for the meta build, go for the good build, right? You're probably not going to discover the next secret hidden OP build, and even if there is a build to discover, it's probably going to take a lot of like trial and error. And throughout this process, you've sacrificed your own LP, right? It's way less of a headache to just build the proper builds and get good at the game, okay? Autopiloting, okay? This is a big problem. Make sure that you're conscious and aware of the game while you're playing the game, okay? Don't just turn your brain off and just play like a robot, basically, okay? Make sure you're conscious. Don't give up on games, okay? You have to try your hardest until the end of the game. You have no idea how winnable some of these low elo games are, and people just give up way too often, okay? And lastly, try to avoid making the same mistake twice. Now, this can not just twice, but just try to avoid making the same mistakes. This can range from something in game where, let's say you got outplayed a certain specific way, right? Let's say you're playing Darius into Jax and you try to Q him and it jumps onto you and avoids the Q. Try not to do that again, right? This is a part of consciousness, but try not to repeat the same mistake. Or like on a more grander scale, you notice that you die like to the jungler so often, right? Like way more often than you should. And it's like, why does that happen, right? And try to tackle the specific topics of like, in order to try to avoid jungle ganks, right? How do junglers gank? When do they gank, right? How do you track a jungler, right? All these things, right? Try to avoid making the same mistake over and over again, okay? All right, platinum. This is where things start getting crazy and complicated, okay? I'm gonna, up until this video, up until this point in the video, I've tried my best to cover the common things, but there will undoubtedly have been things that I've missed. For Platinum, there will definitely be things that I've missed because League, like I said, is a very complicated game, and there are thousands of skills in League of Legends, right? There's so many different skills and things in League of Legends, and different people just suck at different things, right? But I tried my best to put together the things that you should generally be good at, okay? So yeah, now what are the common flaws of Platinum players, okay? Platinum players have massive egos, okay? They're just they just think that they're gods, some of them, and they have huge toxicity problems, right? This is where some of the really L9 edgy, toxic, all that horse shit. This is where it starts to emerge, right? Platinum players have no concept of team play. They basically just ignore that their teammates exist. Okay? Platinum players also usually don't think about the game, right? Now, like the thinking about the game is something that I've had different definitions for throughout the video. But for this case, I mean, like, they don't conceptualize things before they happen, right? Like, they don't think about, okay, the enemy team has a Lulu, so I have to be a bit more careful about the team fight. They just ignore that the Lulu exists and they just go in without thinking about it. And it's like, oh crap, they have a Lulu, right? It's things like these, right? They don't visualize things. They don't think about the game from like a bigger macro level, right? They have insane focusing issues. A lot of players know already what they're supposed to do. It's just they just can't focus. So they just can't even apply all the knowledge that they have gained, okay? Platinum players generally have very shallow knowledge about everything, right? They've gained basic concepts of all the things in the game, like they basically know what macro is. They know some wave management techniques. They have a very shallow knowledge of all these things. Like, they're not good at any of them, though, right? Platinum players do not dodge, like, lost games, okay? They just don't dodge hopeless games. They are very bad at isolating their own weaknesses and working on them. Like, performance mid to late game is still very bad in Platinum, right? It's like straight out laning phase. Platinum players do know how to, kind of initially group up, but the longer the game goes, the more time they waste, right? Platinum players have very little understanding of how other roles function, right? So, like, a platinum jungler is gonna know how to jungle, but they're gonna have no idea what it feels like what it is to be a platinum mid laner, right? So when they try to play around mid lane, because they don't know how mid lane works, they're just gonna do stupid things. It's like, to the mid laner, it's obvious why they wouldn't go for a play like that, but because the jungler does not know that, the jungler does not know what it's like, what a platinum mid lane level is, or they just don't know like how to play mid lane, right? They're gonna basically go for stupid things. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to play all roles. Just understand how roles interact with your lane. Okay, it's basically what I meant by that. Just how other roles interact with you. And lastly, everyone tries to be the carry, right? Everybody thinks they're like, the anime main protagonist, which, no one is if everyone tries to be. So yeah. How to escape platinum. This is probably the most dense slide I have, but yeah, here we go. First off, try to understand what your win condition is. Okay? What's your win condition? How do you win this game? Is it okay? So the whole team is horrible, but we have a Yuumi and we have a fed top laner. So we're gonna put this Yuumi on top of this top laner, and we're just gonna watch them kill everyone. Right? That's the win condition. Or the enemy have an early game team, but we have a late game team. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna give things up. We're gonna slow the game down, get as much time as possible, waste as much time, and buy time for our late game scalers to get kills, to get gold, and to basically carry the game. Right? We have a Kassadin mid. Okay, we have to basically just stop playing our mid lane because he's not gonna have any prio, right? And try to get other people fed so that they can delay the game until the Kassadin can come online, right? Try to understand how you can win the game from your point, right? From this point, how do we win this game? Okay, try to imagine the set of circumstances that you need for the game to be a win. Okay, even if it's a bad lost game, what do we need to win this game? Okay, we gotta win 2-3 team fights, and then try planning. Okay, what do we need to do to win these 2-3 team fights? Okay. Next, you have to set your priorities in order. Okay. Once we have our win condition in sight, you have to make sure you keep a sight of these important things. Okay. If there's a Baron fight coming up, but you're split pushing and you're facing someone, then maybe it's not the best idea to waste some. Unless you're about to die, right? Unless you're about to die, maybe it's not the best idea to waste your summoner spells on killing this one guy when this kill is not going to lead to anything, right? Try to save your resources for more impactful things, okay? It's like, let's say if you're a part of the win condition, let's say you're playing a champion Tryndamere, who needs farm. then make sure you actually go get that farm. That's your priority, right? CS and then go for flanks, right? So just make sure your priorities are in order, okay? General knowledge is no longer enough, okay? Just knowing champion abilities is not enough, right? Just knowing the basics is not enough. You have to roll your sleeves back and really get into the deep of things, okay? One by one, okay? Know a lot of the wave management techniques, know how to CS like insanely well. Try to like expand your macro knowledge by, researching what other roles have to do, right? Or how other roles, interact with your role. Understand your matchups deeply, right? Understand how to like outplay certain mechanics. Understand what the opposing person wants. Let's say you're playing against a Fiora, and in order to play well against the Fiora, you have to understand what Fiora wants, and that is to hit your vitals, right? That's the basic thing. But the more deep thing is going on YouTube and just looking up how do Fiora's vitals spawn, right? So that you can actually predict where the next vital is gonna spawn and like play around it, right? Irelia, right? She wants to, Q, build up her passive and then go on you, right? So where does she want to go? She's gonna Q onto that low HP range minion, so I'm gonna play around that, okay? Try to understand what champions want to do and try to play around that, okay? Now, you have to think about both the enemy team, which is what some of you people do in Platinum, and the allied team. Okay, think about your teammates, man. This is a team game, so you gotta understand what your allied champions are capable of, right? What are they good at? What are they bad at? Can you cover up for their weaknesses? Can you guys go for certain fights that are better for your composition? Can your jungler support you? Do your laners have priority, right? Do your laners need help? Are one of your lanes in a really horrible matchup where they kind of need your help, right? Just like these things, right? So understand what your teammates can do so that you can better work with them, right? Does one jungler need help in crab? All these things, okay? This is a big thing. Everyone playing League has to understand how junglers path, okay? Including you, okay? Now, this point doesn't apply to junglers, but almost everyone else has to understand, no, not just almost, everyone else has to understand how junglers path, okay? So you can play around them, so you can avoid ganks, all these things, okay? A good practice for learning this is to have another account that you jungle on and play this jungle account to one league, I guess, below your rank. So if you're Platinum 4, play your jungle account until Gold 4, for example. Things like that, okay? Stop getting tilted, okay? Find a way to deal with your tilt, alright? This is, really, really important, okay? Okay, I was just checking something on the other side, okay. So yeah, you have to start getting, a lot of people in Platinum. The second something, not something that they do goes wrong, but, something that their teammates do, their teammates generally just mess up. They just get instantly tilted and start raging, right? You want to avoid this, right? If you have tilt problems, I don't know, do yoga, right? Try to focus on yourself instead of trying to blame your teammates, okay? Stick to your small champion pool, right? Because you have to get really good mechanically at this point, okay? If you're bad mechanically, then it's gonna be very hard to get to diamond, okay? So if you want to get to diamond, buckle up, because you have to get pretty good mechanically, right? Pretty okay, right? Better than your peers, of course. You have to start watching your own games in order to isolate the mistakes that you make, okay? Let's say there was a pivotal play, a mistake that you made that just lost you the lane or lost your team the game, right? Download the replay, start watching it, and understand what type of mistake that is. Is that a macro error, right? Is that a mechanical error, right? Try to isolate the type of mistake it is, and look for content for that, learn it, take notes, practice it, and then apply it to your ranked games, okay? You really need to start understanding what specific items and runes do and what circumstances that you should be taking them into, right? You still are not, I know it's a bit radical, but you're still not at the point where you can do radical changes to your builds, okay? The build that you're copying from this high level one trick is still your blueprint. But you have to get really good at knowing what to build when, which runes to build. Like, let's say you're building, a mythic, which part of the mythic you should be building first. You need to get really good at these things, okay? So, yeah. You also have to start researching your teammates in order to dodge people that cannot be worked with. Like, I know, like, I'm gonna get a lot of flack for promoting dodging, but there's not a single high elo player who does not dodge, right? It's just the way of the game, and we have to just get used to it, okay? So yeah, use OPGG or Professor to research your teammates, okay? And lastly, try to find a way to hone in your focus, okay? You have to find a way to, like, force yourself to pay attention to the game at all times. This is different for different people, right? For some people, it's like, clearing up their workspace, clearing up the desk. For some people, it's moving to a different room. For me, it was playing a meditation bell that ringed every 15 seconds to keep me focused into the game. That might work for you. Look up meditation bell 30 seconds on YouTube or something like that. And yeah, just try to find a way to hone in your focus onto the game, okay? Now, things that we should avoid. Avoid games that you cannot win, okay? It can be anything. Personal issues, enemy team compositions, or if it's a bad match that they just dislike, just dodge them, okay? Just avoid them, okay? You're not some sort of main character with plot armor that you can just win every game, right? Every game that you lose for no reason, right, is a waste of time, right? If there's a cleanse ghost Nunu on your team that just got locked in, then just dodge it, okay? Like, you don't want to waste your time on that game, okay? Because every game you lose is just wasted time. Because think about it like this, okay? A normal game where you're trying your hardest throughout the whole thing, win or lose is good practice. But if the game is basically just griefed and lost before it starts, then you're not going to learn anything from that game. It's basically just a waste of time. So just avoid it, okay? Avoid blaming things, okay? You don't want to start blaming just like, the second the game goes wrong, there's a bad play, you're like, oh, my jungler sucks. Oh, my champion is weak. Oh, the enemy is, too OP. Oh, Riot Games hates me. Oh, God doesn't will it. Don't look for excuses, man. Even if you are justified in some of these blamings, just don't do it. Because if you condition yourself to look outside yourself rather than looking within, then you will get hard stuck, okay? And once you get hard stuck, it's such a long and disgusting process to claw your way out, right? Just don't force yourself to be stuck in that pit of just blaming things, okay? Focus on your own issues. It's the only way to climb, okay? You have to kind of understand that platinum, specifically high platinum, is probably like your introduction to the point in game where League of Legends is now mentally taxing to play, okay? Solo queue gets hard for your mind, okay? It gets stressful, right? This is it, okay? So try to make sure that you're bracing your mind for an overwhelming amount of stress, okay? Just don't lose your mind, okay? Like, keep a strong mental, because I know a lot of people who, like, they're nice, fine people. They go through platinum or low diamond and they just come out psychos, right? It's like, it's like the nicest guy I know, and then I play, duo queue with him on my Smurf account, and he's basically just flaming everyone like this monster. And like, what happened to you, man? It's like, like, don't lose your mind, okay? Stay calm, focus on yourself, mute everything. It happens, right? Don't spam games on bad days, okay? If you play 2-3 games and you realize that you're playing horribly for all 3 of these games, and I don't mean bad like, oh, I'm bad, so all my games are bad. I mean, like, genuinely. It's like you normally play at a way higher level than you played for those 3 games. Then that is a bad day. Like, it's time to just stop playing League of Legends, okay? Just take a break, or just don't even play League for the rest of the day, okay? Do not rage queue until you quote-unquote end on a win, okay? Don't do that. You're wasting time, you're wasting effort, you're wasting LP, you're wasting everything, okay? Chill out and just, take a break from the game. Play other things, right? Or just don't even play it. Go outside, do your homework, Like, unless you're a streamer where you have to keep playing, then you're not contractually obligated to play this game for like 10 hours in a row, okay? So it's like, if it's a bad day, don't waste your time, okay? Just chill out. You should try your hardest to not form an ego, okay? Confidence is great, but like, if you permanently act like you're above everyone around you, then that's gonna like halt your progress in this game, okay? At every point in League of Legends, all an ego does is halt your development as a player, okay? So try your hardest to not have a big ego, okay? Lastly, stop using quote-unquote low elo tactics, okay? I see a lot of people who do stupid things, right? And their justification for it is, oh, I know that the guy I'm up against is a bad player, so I'm just gonna do this, like, and I wouldn't normally do it, right? But they just do it because they think everyone else is bad, right? So it's like, these are what I call low elo tactics, right? Constantly fighting someone, constantly doing some specific thing over and over again, okay? Or building like a messed up item and not building defensively enough or something, right? It's like, if you want to play like people who are good at the game, like if you want to play among the people who are good at the game, you have to play the game properly, right? You can't just use these low elo tactics over and over again, okay? So yeah, right? Play the game like the big boys, and you shall become a big boy or big girl, depends. Anyway, yeah, you just gotta adapt to the game and play properly. Oh, Jesus Christ! Oh my God. That was a long video. Jesus. All right. Okay, guys. 1 hour of just me straight talking. Anyway, guys. I know some of you more attentive guys could just notice by the end, but I got very dehydrated at the end, so just started coughing and stuff. So yeah. As a tip, if you're gonna talk for long amounts of time, make sure you have water nearby. I just had 1 cup, but that was not enough. Anyway, guys, that is pretty much it for this video. I'm not sure who would watch it this long, but to whoever did it, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you were able to learn something from this game, right? Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.